Hi everyone, it's Jessica. I'm so glad you're here with me today. So today I actually have two projects for you, and I'm going to start here with this layout featuring these three 3x4 photos of my kids and I at the ice cream shop last summer. Now, when I started making this layout, it was the first day of my spring break from school, and all of our plans actually got canceled because of terrible winter weather. So I was really feeling the need to do something that was going to be bright and colorful and kind of have that spring or summer vibe, which is why I turned to those photos and these papers. So these papers and these oval dies here actually came from my March subscription to Hip Kit Club. And like I said, I was just really kind of feeling that summery hue and wanting to do something with that. And I also was really anxious to start creating with those stitched ovals there. They have a really cool blanket stitch around the edge of them, and they are like a nested die set, so I have lots of different sizes. I knew that I wanted to cut a bunch of them out using the different pattern papers and then somehow kind of arrange them on my page. I wasn't entirely sure how yet, but to do kind of something where I had a bunch of those ovals just kind of around the page. So I did spend a little bit of time kind of playing around with a few ideas. Normally I like to create off of a pattern or at least look at somebody else's design and kind of use that as inspiration. So whenever I do start creating directly from my own imagination, it definitely takes me a little bit more time and effort because I don't have anything else to look at. But like I said, I was just kind of inspired by these ovals and the different pattern papers. So I'm just going to kind of move things around here, and I'm going to end up going in a different direction. I pulled the photos off and I'm like, let me just play with the ovals first, and then I will see how I can work the photos in second. And once I came at it that way, it did definitely work out much better for me. So I'm pretty happy with the ovals going in the diagonal direction here from the bottom left to the top right. And then I think I'm going to keep my photos in a straight line just across the center. So that's looking pretty good to me. So that's what I'm going to go with. And while I have everything here, I don't want to screw anything up. So I'm going to go ahead and start gluing them down. I did bring in my T-square ruler just to make sure that I was going to get those ovals on straight. But I'm just trying really hard not to bump into my paper here and kind of mess things up once I finally gotten it figured out. So I'll do most of this off camera, but I'm going to go ahead and just kind of put a little bit of adhesive behind these and stick them down based on where I have them. Once I've got that part done, I'm going to turn my attention to matting my photos. I felt like they needed a little something to make them stand out because this is definitely starting to get to be a busy background. So I pulled in some sapphire colored cardstock and I have double matted them. So I've got that white mat behind the photos, and then I just layered up that sapphire blue behind them and then trimmed that down. And so I think that that's going to work out pretty well. Here is where I turn to the other die set that I got in my March kit. These are the Stitchable Spring Blooms, and I love them. This is my second die set from Hip Kit Club that has some flowers with stitching holes in them. And if you've been around my channel for a while, you know that anything to do with stitching is definitely calling my name. So I'm just kind of laying the dies out to see if this is going to work. We are eating ice cream in the photos, but I didn't really feel like I wanted to go with an ice cream, theme for my embellishments. Like I said, I was really feeling spring flowers and bright colors, so I'm going to go with the flowers instead and make it kind of a little bit less about ice cream. So now that I know where I'm going to put my flowers, what I'm doing is I'm actually just kind of marking where my photo mat is going to be on each of those ovals, because I'm going to add a little bit of hand stitching to them just to make the perimeter of each oval stand out a little bit more. And I don't want to have to pop up my photos on foam tape because it's going to start to get pretty bulky here quickly. So I don't want to put any stitching behind where the photos will be. So that's why I marked it with a pencil. And that's going to give me an idea of exactly where to stop poking my holes and where to stop doing the stitching all the way around. So it did have that cute little blanket stitch around the edge already imprinted from the die. So it was pretty easy just to follow the inner part of that and poke out some stitching holes for myself. And I just used 6 strands of embroidery floss and some coordinating colors and went around and just kind of, like I said, outlined the perimeter of each of the ovals. So I've gone ahead and die cut a whole bunch of those stitchable spring blooms. Like I said, I am loving them, and so many different options and varieties of ways to combine them. I kind of went a little rogue and started building them differently from how they were shown in the sample packaging. And I have also, since making this layout, seen some of the design team members for Hip Kit Club stitch the flowers in even different ways and kind of layer up the centers in different ways. So I'm really excited to go back and create with these again, because there's just, I think, so many different ways that you can, like I said, stitch them, make the centers, form the centers, layer, stack, just really cool. So like here I took 2 of those orange flowers and I decided to glue them together a little bit offset just to make the petals look fuller. And I also, for a bunch of them, I just took a 1-inch circle punch that I had in my stash, and I just punched out a bunch of yellow circles, and I just layered them, or even white circles, and layered them behind for the centers for the flowers. So not everything has to be stitched, and you'll see later in my still shots that I don't necessarily stitch through everything. But again, just lots of different varieties here for combining things. So I just had a lot of fun just making some flowers and trying to stick with some colors that match that one floral pattern paper. So I'll keep going through and gluing all of those together, and then I will do my stitching off camera. It actually worked out perfectly by the time I was doing all of my gluing and I was ready for the stitching. It was time for my beloved Michigan State Spartans to go play in the Elite 8 game for the NCAA tournament. And so I just took my stuff down with me and I sat and watched basketball and stitched up some flowers. So that was a lot of fun. And I love whenever I feel like I can hang out with my family or watch TV or a game with my husband and still do some crafting at the same time. That's like definitely a win-win in my book. So here you can see I'm just getting a couple of things started before heading downstairs, and this was my favorite flower out of all of them. I really loved the way that the stitches came through here. So you can start here in the center and then just make those long lines going up to each of the top of the petals. And so I used a slightly different color thread. Instead of going with pink, I went with this really pretty like creamsicle orange color to match the center of my flower. And I liked the contrast that had with the pink cardstock of the flower. So you can see here, that one was definitely my favorite out of all of them. And then here you can see the game is over and I've got a whole bunch of flowers ready to embellish with. I don't end up using all of them on my layout. So as I mentioned, if you stay tuned until the end of the layout, I do have a bonus project for you. I went ahead and made 3 cards with my leftover die cuts because I just couldn't let anything go to waste. So here is where I am starting to now kind of play around with where everything's going to go. I know I want to do a floral cluster up here in this top corner of the photo, and that's going to end up being probably my biggest cluster, just kind of building off the corner of that photo there, using some of the smaller leaves. I'm going to change this one out, I think, for a smaller size leaf. It is nice. I've got a lot of different options there, 2 sized leaves plus the sprigs. So that one's looking pretty good. And then I also had these 2, I don't know what you would call them. They're kind of like little journaling spots or tags or something that also came with my Hip Kit subscription. And I wanted to try to work those in to record the date, the place, just a tiny little bit of journaling. There's not a whole lot to say, but I'm going to end up putting those in 2 different spots as well. So I've got that blue one up there and then the orange colored one down in the bottom. So just kind of playing around here. Like I said, continuing to build my flowers. I decided to add these fun little pink centers to my blue flowers to bring a little pink up there to that top cluster. So since I did it to the one flower, I'm going to go ahead and do it to the other flower as well. So just continuing to glue things down. Most of my flowers are up with some really thin foam tape, and those are really the only things that are popped up. Like I said, my photos are flat to the page. Then I remembered I had more stuff to play with that came with this merch kit. So I turned to these puffy stickers and I just grabbed a couple of them off of here. Like there was a really cute little snail that I'm going to put down by that orange journaling black. And then I had a couple of like flowers and things like that. So I just kind of went through and tucked them into the clusters as some smaller pieces. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. I also had some of those glittered foam pieces over there that I tried to use as well, but at that point I felt like it was getting to be a little bit much. So one of my final things here for embellishing is I just turned to some of my stickles. I have them in like 3 different colors, but honestly, I don't really know what the difference is between them. There's like the icicle and crystal. I don't even know what all their names are. They all look kind of the same to me. So I'm like, I don't know, I'm just going to pick one and go with it. And then I put them in the centers on those blue flowers. And then I thought, well, since I have 2 up top, I need to get something in the center of a flower in the bottom cluster, but I didn't have another blue flower down there. So instead I went back and added some stickles to the yellow centers of those pink flowers, just so I could get a little bit of stickles down in the bottom as well. Then I grabbed my white gel pen and added a couple of highlights to the orange flower, and that turned out really cute, and also a couple of highlights to the leaves. And that's going to be it. So this one was a lot of fun to make. Whenever I have to start with just an idea in my head and not something to look at or a sketch, it's definitely challenging for me, but always a lot of fun to see how it turns out in the end. And I am pleased with the way this one turned out. So once we get past these still shots of the layout here, again, I will share with you 3 cards that I made using my leftover floral die cuts. I had a few of the ovals left over too that I had cut out for the page, so I incorporated those into my cards. So I did a little bit of stamping. I just went through my stash and found that Thinking of You stamp, and I used that one twice. And then here I had some die cuts that I used to cut out the word hello. And yeah, like I said, I just went through and this is all I have left now. So I guess I'll have to save those for another project. Thanks so much for being here with me. I hope you guys have been inspired. I've been just having a lot of fun playing with my hip kit stuff. So maybe you have some of the stuff in your stash as well. All right, guys, have an awesome day. Happy crafting. And I hope your weather is a little bit more spring-like wherever you are than it is here in Michigan, where we are still very much in the middle of winter. All right, guys, see you next time. Bye.